The winning blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome back. You are in the lab room on this beautiful Wednesday. Thank you for joining me in the lab room. I am your host, Lou, and last night we had our second installment of Hard Knocks, and what an episode it was. This episode featured the quarterback competition and Garrard having to have surgery. Showed a couple of guys trying to make the team at tight end. But the main part of this episode, the main attraction was Chad Johnson's off the field altercations and his subsequent release from the team. They actually showed him sitting down with head coach Joe Philbin and what took place, the process that they went through to get rid of Chad Johnson, him actually sitting down and talking to him. That was some riveting TV. That was must-see TV. I was glued to the television. I did not want the episode to end. I kept looking at the clock to see what time it was because I knew at 10:55 the episode would be over and I didn't want it to go off. It was that good. That was some really good TV. I can't state that enough. You have to watch Hard Knocks. And this episode was probably the single most greatest episode in the history of the Hard Knocks series. And that's saying a lot. The show's been on for about 6 or 7 years. And so to say that this probably was the best episode ever is saying a lot. But you didn't get the drama that you got last night in any other episode. You know, you could talk about all the guys trying to make the team you want, but we had a guy that was on his last hope. This was it for Chad Johnson. And you could see it in his eyes. He knew he had messed up monumentally. And I think it took a lot out of him, and it took a lot for him not to cry. He really held back tears. I think he really was hoping that he could walk in there, apologize to Joe Philbin, get him to understand that he made a mistake and keep his job. And I think midway through that conversation, he started to realize he wasn't going to keep his job. He was going to be back on the streets looking for work. And I don't think he's going to get it. And I think he knows that that was his last chance. That was it for him. Teams aren't putting up with veteran receivers, especially ones that come with baggage. And this was it for Chad. This was his last shot in the NFL. I don't think he's going to get another chance. I think he knows he's not going to get another chance. That's why he was so sentimental. And again, a great watch. I feel for Chad, but he did this to himself. I've already talked about Chad Johnson and what I thought football meant to him, and that I was disappointed in him. And that was sad to watch, but at the same time, it was still great television. We move on though to the lab report, and today we're still in the AFC North, and we start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now the Bengals surprised a lot of people, including myself in 2011. They stepped up. Guys came in as rookies, performed at a high level, even a Pro Bowl level, and put the Cincinnati Bengals on the map. You take a look at the Bengals and where they came from just 2 years ago. They were a laughingstock of the league, as they've been for over a decade. Prior to 2011, they went and they made some changes. They brought in some draft picks. And 2 years later, you look and the Cincinnati Bengals are now a relevant player in the AFC North. I mean, 18 months ago, you couldn't say that. 18 months ago, Carson Palmer was begging to be traded and said he was going to retire if they didn't trade him. The Bengals were reeling. Marvin Lewis's job was at stake for the 37th time. You had questions about this Cincinnati Bengals team and franchise. Now you go to 2012, sky's the limit. Expectations are high. And it all happened over one season. Let's get to the strength and tell you why it happened. The reason why the Cincinnati Bengals turned their fortunes around is because of their youth. The Cincinnati Bengals are a young and talented football team. That's the key phrase in that statement that I just made. And talented. You can be young all you want, but being talented makes all the difference in the world. And they're young and talented. They have a lot of guys on their roster, up and down their roster, that have the potential to be not just good players in this league, great players in this league. They have a lot of young, talented players up and down that roster. One thing I can say about the Cincinnati Bengals that they've done well is they've drafted well. When you're a bad football team, don't be bad in vain. That's my biggest pet peeve. If you're gonna stink, be funky and productive at the same time. And you can do that. If you're gonna be bad, use your draft picks to select good players. Don't waste your picks on guys that aren't gonna get it done for you. Take guys that you know have the love for football, are going to come in and work hard. If a guy's not good because he's just not good, that's one thing. But if a guy's not good because he's not going to give you maximum effort, I have a problem with that. Take guys that are good character guys that are going to come in, put in the work that's necessary to be a good NFL player. The Bengals have done that. They've exceeded expectations for themselves, and a lot of it has to do with the youth on their roster. These guys are young. They don't know about the history of the Bengals, and that's a good thing. The Bengals have struggled for the last 2 decades. They've had their spots here and there, but for the most part, they've been an inconsistent mess of a franchise. And so these young players don't know anything about that. They don't know about the Bengals past. All they know is that they're coming in, they're hungry, and they want to win football games. That's a good thing for the Bengals. You also look at another strength of the Bengals, and that's their patience. And really, you didn't say that about the Bengals 2 years ago. Their patience and the way that they conducted business was a weakness. But yet their patience over the last 2 years have turned into a major strength. They've exhibited patience with Marvin Lewis. How many times have people said he should have been fired or have left him for dead? Marvin Lewis was fired 9 times already, if you let it be told by the media. The Bengals kept Marvin Lewis throughout all the turmoil, throughout all the adversity on and off the field for the Bengals as a franchise. And they understand that in the NFL, continuity or some type of structure that's consistent is necessary for success in the NFL. And so keeping Marvin Lewis as their head coach created a sense of stabilization for that franchise. And it's paying dividends now. Also, you look at the Carson Palmer situation. Carson Palmer wanted to be traded. He demanded to be traded and threatened to retire if they didn't trade him. What did the Bengals do? They exhibited patience. They didn't act quickly. They didn't do anything rash. They told Carson Palmer, you don't want to play? Go sit down in the corner and sit down and go somewhere. We'll talk to you when we're ready to deal with you. You don't want to play? Fine. Go sit down. We'll play without you. And that's what they did. They moved on. And when they exhibited that patience, a deal came along and they got a ransom of picks for Carson Palmer. Patience again paid off for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a strength for them. You go on to their weaknesses, and their weakness is their youth. It's a gift and a curse. Because they're such a young football team, they don't really know how to win games, especially against the upper echelon teams in their own division. The Bengals are such a young team that it's going to take time for them to learn how to beat the good teams in this league. Beat teams like the Ravens, like the Steelers, like the Patriots. It's going to take time for them to learn how to win those games. It's also going to take time for them to learn how to step on the necks of teams that aren't very good, like the Browns, like the Rams, like the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have to learn how to squash these teams. Last year, I felt like they let some games get away that they should have, of teams that they should have beaten. And they'll learn how to overcome that over time if they can keep this team together and allow them to gel. But that is a weakness for the Cincinnati Bengals. You move on to camp battles, and you see that the Cincinnati Bengals have camp battles littered all over their camp this season. And that's a good thing. You want to promote competition within your team to make people better. You want to push players to become better at their craft. And so the Bengals have lots of camp battles. We start with the first camp battle of note, and that's the wide receiver position opposite A.J. Green. The Bengals have a need at that second wide receiver spot. Jerome Simpson left for free agency. He's now in Minnesota. And so they need someone to fill in that void at the second wide receiver position. They have several receivers that they're looking to fill that with. Among them, Armand Benz, the second-year receiver out of Cincinnati. You look at Marvin Jones, a rookie that they drafted in the 5th round this year out of Cal. And you also look at another receiver, Mohamed Sanu, the second-round selection that they had in this year's draft. And I think Sanu has the best chance to start. He's the most NFL ready out of all the guys I just named. Of course, Ben being already a Bengal last year on the practice squad, he knows a little bit more about what's going on. But Mohamed Sanu is a football player. He gets it done. He's got the size. He's got the requisite size and the playmaking ability. His hands are second to none. He catches the ball. Mohamed Sanu looks like a guy that's ready to step in and be a starter day one. In terms of the battle, as far as it's concerned, all of these guys are going to get reps in the preseason. Jones looked pretty good over the weekend. Benz looked solid as well. So you don't know who's going to get all the reps, who's getting the most reps in practice. All you can go off of is what you've seen. And right now, Sanu seems to be the best fit for what they're trying to do as a complement to AJ Green, because Sanu can go over the middle, make the tough catches. He's a tough receiver. He's built for being a guy that can go over the middle and do the dirty work. AJ Green is the guy you want to stretch the field with. You don't really want him taking too many shots over the middle of the field. Let someone else do that. Mohamed Sanu is the guy that can step in and be a great complement to AJ Green. You also look at another battle, and it's two battles along that defensive line, and they're both at defensive end spots. First of these two battles along the defensive line at defensive end is between Robert Gathers, the incumbent starter, and Carlos Dunlap, the up-and-coming young defensive end out of Florida. This is basically a competition between upside and consistency. Gathers is a consistent guy that's a great fit for the Bengals if they're trying to stop the run. Anytime you go first and second down, Robert Gathers is the man you want on the field. He's strong at the point of attack. He can set the edge. But he's not much of a pass rusher anymore. Ever since he tore his ACL about 3 or 4 years ago, he hasn't had that same explosion that he showed in that season. When he got hurt, he had about 8 sacks. So he's never shown that explosion again since coming back from that injury. And Carlos Dunlap has proved that he can get after the quarterback. He's emerging as a young, rising defensive end, and the Bengals think that he can come in if he's given more snaps, if he's given more on his plate, he can produce more for them. I think he's going to get the nod because the Bengals are a young team and they're looking to get younger. And Carlos Dunlap is a young guy that is very explosive, can get after the quarterback. If he can prove that he can play the run consistently, I don't see why he wouldn't get this spot. You look at the other defensive end position, and that's between Jamal Anderson, a free agent acquisition of the Bengals, and Michael Johnson. And I've been waiting for Michael Johnson to explode. His measurables and his makeup, his physical build is one that screams all pro. I struggle with Michael Johnson and his ability to not have been a better player for the Bengals already. He's in his 4th season now, and I've waited for this guy to just explode. The athleticism, the size, it's all there. He's 6'7", 270. He's an explosive guy. He can move. I don't understand why Michael Johnson hasn't put it together yet. He came out of Georgia Tech, and I said, this guy's a freak. And I haven't seen what I was looking for yet. And maybe this is the season where he breaks out. They give him the starting nod. They give him the keys to that other defensive end position, and maybe he drives away with it. Let's hope that that's the case if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, because he has immense potential, and it has to come to fruition now. He needs to start showing the Bengals that he can get the job done, or they're going to look for someone else to do his job. Jamal Anderson is a backup. He's not someone that you want to start along your defensive line. He's been in the league a while. He's been a disappointing draft pick. The Falcons gave up on him. He went to Indianapolis last year. They said, we had enough of you. They let him go. And now he's in Cincinnati. He's a backup, and that's fine because he can play the run, but he's not going to get pressure on the quarterback. Michael Johnson needs to step up, take command of that position, show the Bengals that you are the guy that they drafted. You look at another positional battle, and that's between Manny Lawson and Dan Schefter for that outside linebacker position across from Thomas Howard. Thomas Howard has solidified himself at that outside linebacker position. Now they're looking for somebody to solidify themselves on that other side of that outside linebacker position, with Ray Mataluga cementing himself in the middle. Manny Lawson is an enigma. You look at Manny Lawson, and he has all the physical gifts. He's 6'6", about 245, 250. He can run like lightning. He's so fast. He's so quick. You don't understand why his production doesn't meet his attributes. And I think the Bengals are finding that out now, like the 49ers did, that even though this guy's physical gifts are off the charts, they don't match his production. You don't get the most out of what he has physically. And I think they're finding that out slowly, and they're realizing, I don't think we're going to get out of Manny Lawson what we thought we could get out of Manny Lawson. And that's the enigma about him, is that you don't know why he's not better than he is. So Dan Schefter, who's been on the Bengals roster for 3 years, hasn't really produced much, has come along slowly. They want to see what he can do if Manny Lawson's not going to produce. They figure we might as well give another guy a shot and see if he gets more snaps, if he can produce better than Manny Lawson. So Manny Lawson has to give them a reason to continue to start him. If he doesn't, they're going to look to start someone else. That guy might be Dan Schefter. Couple of quick notes on camp battles. Vontaze Burfict is a linebacker that no one really wanted to give a chance because of his off-field, even his on-the-field actions. He wasn't a stable guy on the field. His work ethic was challenged. He wasn't in shape a lot of times, and so teams were just passing on him. And he said he was going to make teams pay. Well, he's got an opportunity. The Bengals, who love to give people opportunities to prove themselves, even guys with checkered past like Burfict, they give him a chance. He has to come in and get a spot. There's one middle linebacker spot available behind Ray Mataluga. He's battling with another young linebacker, McElroy out of Texas. He's been with the Bengals for 3 years now, so he should have the upper hand. But Burfict, if he can show them that he is a guy that can have an immense upside and that can play in this league, and if he can perform on special teams in the meantime, waiting to get on the field, he might be able to sneak in the roster on the back end. Also, you look at third running back position. Cedric Pierman, a third-year back out of Virginia, looking to solidify a spot on the roster. The Bengals spent a 6th-round pick on running back Dan Herron out of Ohio State. That's a guy that wants to make the team. He doesn't want to be relegated to the practice squad. That's going to be another battle because it's one spot remaining on those running backs. And so whoever gets it will make the squad. Whoever doesn't will probably be relegated to the practice squad. I don't even know if Pierman is eligible for the practice squad this year. So it's important for him to make the team. And he's come out and had a good preseason so far. He looked good in the first game. He's been good in camp. So we'll see if he's able to lock down that third running back position. I'm going to move on to their draft picks, and we'll go to our rookie watch. The Bengals did an excellent job, I think, probably the best job of anyone in the 2012 draft of making their team better and making them better for the 2012 season. You can have a great draft but not see the dividends of your draft pay off until 3-4 years down the road. They could see dividends being paid immediately from this draft that they made this year. Their first-round selections were Dre Kirkpatrick, the cornerback out of Alabama, and Kevin Zeitler, the guard out of Wisconsin. Dre Kirkpatrick probably won't start game one. The Bengals have corners that they like, a couple of veterans that they're going to put out there. And I like to have my corners well seasoned. I don't like putting rookies in the mix early on at cornerback unless they're a rare and special talent like a Champ Bailey when he came out, or like a Darrelle Revis when he came out. Those are the type of guys, top 10 picks that you can throw in. If I don't know if Dre Kirkpatrick is that type of player where you can just throw him in there day one and say, go make plays for us, don't get beat. They like Leon Hall. He's coming off of an injury. And before he got injured, he was shaping up into a top corner in this league. They also have Nate Clements, a veteran guy that they got in free agency a while back and paid a lot of money to, and they look for him to produce as well. So he's going to have to wait his turn, Dre Kirkpatrick is. But he's going to play. He's probably going to be in a nickel. He's going to see time out wide, and so he's going to get on the field. He just needs to produce when he does get his opportunities. The guard, Kevin Zeitler, out of Wisconsin, they're looking to plug him in day one. The Bengals lost Bobby Williams in free agency to the Baltimore Ravens, and so they need to fill that spot. Enter Kevin Zeitler. He can go in, fill in that spot. If you want to get offensive linemen from a conference in college football, the Big Ten is the place to do it. He's a big, husky guy that can come in and solidify that guard position for the Cincinnati Bengals. And their line was really good last year. And I don't think Zeitler is going to miss a beat. He's going to step in, and this line is not going to miss a beat because he's going to produce. He's NFL ready, and I expect him to come in and be a solid contributor for the Bengals in 2012. You look at their second-round selection, defensive tackle out of Penn State, Devon Still. Still is a guy that's going to come in and provide depth along that line. The Bengals love what they already have in D'Amato, Pico, and Atkins at defensive tackle. Atkins is shaping up to be one of the best defensive tackles at getting to the quarterback. He has an uncanny ability to get to the quarterback. So Devon Still is just going to be providing depth right now, but the defensive line is a position that you want to have lots and lots of depth at. Guys get tired. Rotations are big. You want to be cycling guys back in and out of the game, and you want to be able to keep guys fresh because that's when they produce at their highest level. So Devon Still is going to help that defensive line have more depth so guys can get in and out and be fresher and be able to produce. You look at third round selections. The Bengals had 2 of them. Mohamed Sanu, we've talked about him. He's a guy that's going to come in and compete for that second wide receiver position. And I think he's ready to start. Also, the Bengals selected Brandon Thompson, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. And Clemson has quietly been producing NFL-ready defensive linemen of late. You look at Daquan Bowers. You talk about Jarvis Jenkins last year. Both of them went in the first 2 rounds of the draft. This year, Brandon Thompson goes in the 3rd round. Clemson has quietly been producing defensive linemen that are ready to play in the NFL. They're quietly becoming a factory for defensive linemen. You even take a step back further, and they produce Gaines Adams, the late Gaines Adams. They've been putting out defensive linemen here for the last few years. Quietly, and these guys have been productive or shown the ability to be productive in this league. Let's see if Brandon Thompson can be somebody that can add depth to that defensive line and be productive. 4th round selection was the tight end Orson Charles out of Georgia. The Bengals need depth behind Jermaine Gresham. The Bengals have been tight end starved and deprived for years. Now they're looking to be tight end rich. And that's good. You need to have diversity at the tight end position. You need to have depth at the tight end position. Orson Charles has a little ways to go in the blocking game, but he can catch the football. They have time to coach him up because he's not going to be a starter. He's going to be in 2 tight end, 3 tight end sets. And so he's going to have time to work at his craft because Jermaine Gresham is the go-to tight end out there in Cincinnati right now. 5th round selections, the Bengals had 2 of them again. You look at Marvin Jones, the wide receiver out of California. This guy is someone that can come in. He's a polished receiver. He's not the most athletic, but he's polished. He has great hands. He gets in and out of his breaks. He finds ways to get open. He's deceptively quick. He's not a burner, so he's not going to separate from you. But he finds ways to get open. His hands are great. He catches the ball. He snatches it out of the air. He's another guy that's competing for that second wide receiver spot. He's going to play this year. He's going to produce. I like Marvin Jones a lot, and I think that's good value for the Bengals in the 5th round. Also, they drafted free safety George Iloka out of Boise State. This is a big, big man. He's 6'3", 225 pounds, and he's a load at the free safety position. Now, he's a big athletic guy, but his athleticism matches his height. He's not as shifty as a 5'11", 6-foot safety. He doesn't twist his hips as fluidly as you would like. He's not a guy that's going to wow you with his athleticism. But for that size, he can move. He can make plays on the football. He's a solid tackler. You would like him to be a little bit more physical than he is. But he's a solid tackler. He's not going to wow you with his skill set. But he's so big. He is athletic for his size. And so if you can find a way to get him to work, that could be somebody that might be able to play and start for you down the road in the future. They already have a guy like him on the roster that they're trying to get something out of in Taylor Mays. And Taylor Mays is way more athletic than George Iloka. But still, he's another guy that I don't understand why he's not better. He's a 4.4 speed guy. He's very athletic. He can move. He's a little tight in the hips. He's tightly wound, but he can move. He can jump. He can run. I just think sometimes he takes bad angles and makes decisions and has blunders back there in the secondary, and that's why he hasn't caught on with the team thus far at safety. But he's going to get a chance this year, is Taylor Mays, and what he does with it, we will see. It's going to be important for his career because this is either going to make or break him. He's either going to be a starting safety in this league or he's going to be a special teams guy for the rest of his career. This is his chance. Let's see what he does with it. 6th round selection was Dan Herron, the running back out of Ohio State. And he's fighting for a roster spot. He's fighting for that 3rd running back position. And Honestly, I don't know if he really has a realistic chance of getting it. I think Cedric Pierman has been on the Bengals practice squad for a couple of years. He's gotten carries in the regular season. And so I think they're comfortable with Cedric Pierman, and I think they're going to give him every opportunity to lock down that third running back position. Dan Herron is probably going to have to make his way onto the practice squad and go from there. That's gonna round out the rookie watch. Let's get into the experiment. Let's get into this experiment, and I dubbed this experiment Bengals no longer bungles. The Bengals are no longer a laughingstock of the National Football League. They're no longer the bottom feeders in the AFC North. The Bengals are shaping up into a team that can contend in the AFC. And they made the playoffs last year, which is a huge leap from where they were 2 years ago. And a lot of it is because of their youth and because of the exuberance that these guys have come in with and look to perform with. These guys have come in and have paid immediate dividends for the Bengals. And that's what you want when you're a bad football team and you have high draft picks. You want these guys that you draft to come in and show why they are high draft picks, and that's what the Bengals have done, and they haven't missed on their picks, and that's what you have to do. Don't be bad in vain. Be bad and productive at the same time, and that's what the Bengals have done. Let's go into the research question. Are Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals the real deal, and if so, can they continue to build off their 2011 season? That's the question you have to ask yourself if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan. I'm not sold on Andy Dalton. I'm not sold on the Red Rifle quite yet. He has to show me some more because that arm is lacking. That's evident. He has a big-time playmaking receiver in Adriel Jeremiah Green. He has to find a way to get Adriel Jeremiah Green a football. A.J. Green is a big play receiver in this league. He's shown that he can get it done in his rookie season. I'm looking for more from A.J. Green. I expect more from A.J. Green. But I'm not sure if Andy Dalton's arm matches the ability that A.J. Green brings to the table. I need to see more from Andy Dalton this year. I need you to prove to me that last year wasn't an aberration and that you're actually a good NFL quarterback. A starter in this league at that. And so I need to see more from Andy Dalton just to reassure myself that he's as good as he says he is as advertised. I'm not sure I believe the hype yet. I need Andy Dalton in season 2 to prove to me that he is the guy that put up 20 touchdowns and only 13 interceptions and threw for over 3,000 yards last year and took his team to the playoffs in his rookie season. Now, sophomore slumps are in order. They happen in the National Football League. So if he doesn't have a good year, I'm not going to get down on him automatically. But I will say that I don't believe in him now, and if he doesn't produce in his sophomore season, that's going to give me more doubt. That's going to give me more ammunition to not believe in him. So let's see what Andy Dalton can do, because this team is only going to be as good as that tandem is, Andy Dalton to A.J. Green. Hypothesis. If Andy Dalton is in fact a viable starting quarterback in this league, A.J. Green is what we think he is, and the defense continues to play up to Marvin Lewis's standards, then the Cincinnati Bengals will be for real and a serious player in the AFC North. I mean, that's cut and dry. And that's exactly what you have to ask yourself as a Bengals fan and as the Bengals staff. You have to ask yourself all of those questions. Is Andy Dalton the real deal? Is A.J. Green as advertised? Is this Bengals defense going to continue to play at the high level that they played at last year? All of these things and more, you have to ask yourself and say, if we can get the production out of these guys we got in 2011, we will be fine. Moving on to materials needed. Dandy Andy Dalton. Dandy Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton has to play good football. He has to be consistent for the Cincinnati Bengals to be a good football team. I need to see more of it. I'm not a believer yet. I'm not buying Andy Dalton's stock right now. I need to see it. If he can show me that he's a solid quarterback and that last year wasn't a fluke, I'm all in on Andy Dalton. But if he gives me more reason to think that he might not be the guy, then I'll be definitely selling more Andy Dalton stock and telling you, you should too. So we'll see what Andy Dalton does in 2012. He needs to be a good quarterback for this Bengals team to achieve any kind of success in 2012. AJ Green, are you really money? AJ Green, you're really starting to show me that you're the guy out of Georgia that was an explosive playmaker in the SEC. I thought AJ Green could be this guy, but I wasn't sure. I said, you have to show me. And AJ said, I'll show you better than I can tell you. And that's what he's done. So AJ Green is starting to look money. That green is starting to show as money. And I want to see more from AJ Green. I want him to continue to be a playmaker in this league because the Bengals need him to be a playmaker in this league. And it's refreshing to see young receivers come in the league and dominate like AJ Green did last year. Potential to fruition. The Bengals have so much talent from top to bottom on this roster that's young. But it's potential right now. They need to tap into that potential and turn it into fruition. I've already spoken about a few guys. Michael Johnson. Guys like Michael Johnson that are on the roster that you see and know that he can be a special player in this league. Taylor Mays, you see the potential there, but you got to get something out of these guys. They're littered with these guys up and down the roster. Armand Benz, a guy out of Cincinnati, has talent. Can he produce for you on the field? You have to ask yourself these questions. The Bengals gave up on Keith Rivers because he couldn't stay hurt, and he wasn't showing them enough at the linebacker position. He had talent, though. The Bengals need to see more out of these guys because they have talent, but it has to come to fruition. Again, you'll hear me say this a lot because I feel like this is an awesome quote. Brian Billick said, son, your potential will get me fired. You can't be a guy that has potential but never really shows what he can do. Your potential has to come to fruition. And if you're the Bengals, you want to see that this year. Wide-eyed becomes narrow focus. The Bengals were a wide-eyed football team. They were young, they were hungry, and they were just happy to get a ticket to the show last year. They got a ticket to the show at 9-7, got a backdoor ticket into the show, nonetheless, still a ticket to the dance. They made it to the playoffs, and they were just happy to get there. And that's fine when you're a young team, hungry, and you don't know any better. But now you have to take the next step. You can't be that wide-eyed team that was just happy to be at the party last year. Now you have to come in with a different approach. Now you have to come in with a narrow focus. You have to come in and your eyes have to be like this. And you have to be concentrating on the goal at hand. You have to be able to look and say, this is what our goal is for 2012, and this is what we need to do to attain this goal. Let's go get it. Last year, you were happy to have a chance. You were like this. Hey, we made it to the dance. We're in the playoffs. That was cool. Now you have to be like this. Let's go get it. That's what you need to see from the Bengals this year in 2012. That takes us to the data. The data that the Bengals need to repeat their playoff run last year or their playoff appearance from last year. Andy Dalton, 3,500 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a 59.8% completion percentage. Andy Dalton looked good last year. He was consistent. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. He only had 13 interceptions, and he had 20 touchdowns. That's a solid ratio for a rookie quarterback. Let's step that ratio up a little bit more. More touchdowns. Keep the interceptions the same. If you could bring them down, that'd be great. But if they stay the same and you increase your touchdown passes, you got better as a quarterback. Bring that completion percentage up a little bit. You're probably not going to make it to 60 yet. If you do, great. If you don't, fine. Just hover around 60, though. AJ Green, Adriel Jeremiah Green can be a force in this league. And I'm looking for him to take that next step to becoming an all-pro receiver in this league. 69 to 77 catches, 1,100 receiving yards, and 8 to 10 touchdowns. That's doable. He had over 1,000 in his rookie campaign. I'm looking for him to take that next step and get to 1,100. Jordan Shipley. This is a guy that was injured last year. I love Jordan Shipley. He's a guy in the slot that is scary. You don't want to have to cover Jordan Shipley in the slot. He's shifty. He reminds me a lot of Wes Welker. I hate to continue to compare everybody that's in the slot to Wes Welker, but Wes Welker is the preeminent slot guy in the NFL. Jordan Shipley reminds me of that, of Wes Welker. In 2010, when he played a full season with Carson Palmer, Jordan Shipley was on his way to becoming a great slot receiver in this league. He got injured in 2011, missed basically the whole season, only played in 2 games, and so he's coming back this year. If he's healthy, if he's right, Jordan Shipley is going to bring a lot to this Bengals offense. Jordan Shipley I have him down for 62 to 71 catches, for 805 to 870 yards, and 3 to 5 touchdowns. Look for Jordan Shipley to come in, solidify that slot position, and be a force in the slot for the Cincinnati Bengals if he is healthy. Jermaine Gresham. This is a big man. This is a big man who knows how to use his body to get position, to get his hands on the football. Jermaine Gresham has started to turn himself into a good tight end in this league. He's not upper echelon yet. He's working towards that. But if he continue to work closely and grow with Andy Dalton, Jermaine Gresham could be a viable tight end in this league. Jermaine Gresham is going to needs to have 60 to 66 catches for 605 to 645 yards and 5 to 7 touchdowns. He has to be a bigger threat in the red zone. He has to score more touchdowns. When plays are there to be made, Jermaine Gresham needs to make them. He needs to pluck the ball out of the air, use his big frame to get yak after he catches the ball. Bengals running backs. They went out and got Benjarvis Green-Ellis from the Patriots this year to be their workhorse. He can do that. I think he can do that, but I'm still not sold on him being a guy that can carry the rock and be your guy that's going to carry it 25 times a game. I don't think they need to do that with him. If they can supplement him with Bernard Scott, and he's on his last legs in Cincinnati as well, because they don't feel like they've gotten the production out of him that they should have at this point. And so he might be on his last leg. But they've got a stable of backs. We've talked about Dan Herron trying to make the team, Cedric Pierman. If somebody else can step up and take some carries from Benjarvis Green-Ellis, I think that'll be beneficial to the Bengals. You don't want to have to just give this man the ball 25 times, because I don't know if that's in his DNA or not. You could find that out this year. And if you find out that, in fact, he can, good for you. If not, you don't want to not have a plan B ready to take effect. So I look for the Bengals to have a balanced attack, and an attack that is supplemented by a running back by committee type of backfield. And so I have the Bengals as a running back group to have not 390 carries to 440 carries for 1,825 rushing yards and 9 to 11 total touchdowns. The Bengals are quietly an above average defense in this league. They're not elite, but they're the next tier down. They're right there. They do everything good and solid across the board defensively. They don't give up a lot of rushing yards. They don't give up a lot through the air. They don't give up a lot of big plays. They get sacks. The only area of weakness that you could say the Bengals have on defense is forcing turnovers. And I think a lot of that, they forced fumbles. They just didn't force a lot of interceptions. So I think Leon Hall being injured last year had a lot to do with that. He was an up-and-coming corner who was a playmaker. He got his hands on a lot of footballs. Him coming back this year, if healthy, I think will boost that number quite a bit. Force 29 to 33 turnovers. Get 42 to 47 sacks. 19.6 points a game. They were just a shade over 20 last year, right around 20.8, 20.4, somewhere in there. That's a good number for them. If they could get that number under 20, that'd be even better. because I think the Bengals can score 20 points a game. I don't see why that offense can't score 20 points a game. And if you can get your defense to hold teams under 20, that gives you that much more of a chance to win football games. 7 to 9 plays of 40 yards or more. They gave up 7 last year. I expect them to be right around there again this year. The Bengals defense is really good. People sleep on their defense, myself included. Their defense is really good. It's solid. Marvin Lewis knows how to coach defense. That's what he does. And their defense is really, really, really good. It's really solid. Independent variable. The Bengals were solid in a number of areas on defense. I've just spoke about this. The only area that they could have used work in was interceptions. They only had 10 interceptions a year ago. They need to have more. And so Leon Hall coming back should pay off in that respect. He should come back and be able to get 3, 4, maybe 5 picks and help boost that total by himself. The Bengals are looking for Taylor Mays to come in and play this year. Maybe he could get them some extra interceptions. We don't know. We don't know what Taylor Mays is as a safety in this league. So we're going to see. We're going to find out together. He could be a mess at safety. That number of big plays given up could jump to 11 this year. We don't know. We have to find out. The dependent variable is the flip side of that. They get more turnovers. They get more interceptions. They get shorter fields for the offense. They get more points put on the board. They get to be more aggressive as a defense. I say that all the time because that's what turnovers do. Turnovers create shorter fields for your offense, which in turn turns into more points for your offense, which allows the defense to be aggressive. You go on from there to the constant, and the constant for the Cincinnati Bengals is Marvin Lewis. The Bengals allowing Marvin Lewis to be their head coach for 8 seasons, going into his 9th, has been a breath of fresh air for this franchise. And really, it's been a surprise to many because he was supposed to be fired already. He was supposed to be fired 37 times already. And so for Marvin Lewis to still have a job as a head coach in the National Football League for the Cincinnati Bengals is a surprise to many, but it's a good move for the Bengals. I think a lot of times franchises have too quick of a trigger on these head coaches. They don't give them a chance to really show what they can do. 2 or 3 years is not long enough, especially when you're a new head coach. A lot of times you don't walk into a situation like with the Steelers, like Mike Tomlin did, where this team is ready to win right away. Cowher stepped away and retired. You don't get coaches that retire often. You get coaches that are fired most times. When you are fired, that means your team wasn't any good. So you need to come in and imprint your system and put your imprint on the team, and you have to turn that roster over. You have to get your type of player in there. And that takes 2 to 3 years to do that in itself. And if not given a chance, you don't get to turn the team around because franchises have such a quick trigger to get rid of coaches. And I thought the Bengals were smart in giving Marvin Lewis a chance to turn his franchise around. Now, was it smart because the Bengals were being smart, or was it smart because the Bengals were being cheap and stupid? I don't know. Whatever the case may be, it ended up being the right decision, so it doesn't matter in the long run. Marvin Lewis being their head coach still is the right decision. He's a constant for the Cincinnati Bengals. Conclusion. The Cincinnati Bengals are a team that's on the cusp of doing something great. And again, like I said with the Lions, they're building something of substance. And it's coming, and you see it. But Andy Dalton's maturation is key. A lot of these young players have to show that they can play in this league. That's going to be something that you also have to keep an eye on. And a development of a lot of these guys and seeing their potential come to fruition is going to be key for the Bengals. And sometimes when you're a young team, you have to take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward. And in this case, I think that's what's going to happen to the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this is an extreme number that I have down for them. I have them going 5-11 this year. That's extreme because I can't allow myself to let them beat the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens yet. I can't see them doing that until they prove to me that they can do that. I haven't seen that yet. I need them to show me that they can beat the big boys in their division. So that's 4 losses by itself right there. Okay? I have them going 0-4 against the NFC East. That may not happen. That probably won't happen. They probably might split the NFC East in half. They're really an 8-8, 9-7 team. But I'm giving them an extreme worst case scenario because I need them to show me that they're for real. I don't believe the hype right now. I'm not on the Bengals bandwagon. They have to show me that they're legit, and I'm not buying it right now. And so I have them at 5-11. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went 7-9, 8-8. But that's still a step back from last year. But in order to go 2 steps forward, sometimes you have to take a step back. And that's what I think the Bengals are going to do. After this break in our lab quiz, we'll be back. And we'll be back with the Cleveland Browns. I'll see you after this break.
Lab quiz. Lab quiz.
Yes, we're back, and we're back with the Cleveland Browns. Hard for me to say that with a straight face. These guys are terrible, and there's no other way to say it. Let's just get into the Cleveland Browns lab report. Their strengths. Not much to discuss here. Really, there isn't. They're young. They're young. They're young. And so I guess you have something to build on there. Not quite young and talented. They appear to have some pieces that seem to fit that bill. You look at Joe Hayden. I mean, you look at Joe Thomas. And you look at Phil Taylor, Jabal Sheard. They have some guys that look like they could be promising. Greg Little. But the jury's still out on a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys are in their second, third years. You haven't seen the consistent production that you would like. So you can't go out and say that they're going to be good players in the league yet. And so you have to question whether they have talent. They're young. That's a strength, I guess. Weaknesses. No talent. I had a friend tell me last year that the Cleveland Browns were the worst watch in the league. I said that's a little harsh, man. They can't be that bad. I watched the Cleveland Browns. It was that bad. They were the worst watch in the league. Unwatchable football, if there's anything, if there's a such thing. Cleveland Browns in 2011 were it. They got to get more talent. That's a glaring weakness. They don't have a lot of parts out there. If you are a team and you got to pick pieces off of their roster would basically be intact. You would take Joe Thomas. You would take Joe Hayden. You would take a few of these guys off of their roster. But for the most part, their 53-man roster would still be intact. And so they have to get more talent on their roster. There's not enough there for them to be a viable team in this league and win games consistently. They have to get more talent. The next weakness for the Browns is no talent. You got to get more talent to perform in this league. They don't have enough of it. They need to be more talented at the skill positions. They need to find guys that can get it done in the National Football League. And right now, they don't have enough of them. Another weakness was the owner of the Browns, or former owner of the Browns, Randy Lerner. The Browns weren't his number one priority. That distinction went to his premier soccer team. So his Premier League soccer team. He didn't really focus in on the Browns as he should have. They weren't his first priority. And so things that should have been taken care of were allowed to manifest themselves and grow into this large ball of funk called the Cleveland Browns. And so now this next owner has to come in, and he has to come in and clean up the mess that the last owner left. And he tried to get Mike Holmgren to come in and clean up a lot of the mess that he left, but Mike Holmgren wasn't even that good of a GM in Seattle. So, I mean, you're cleaning up a mess that should be cleaned up with a rag. You're cleaning it up. You're trying to clean it up with toilet paper. Not going to get it done. The Browns are in some trouble, and it's hard for me to see the future being bright for the Cleveland Browns. They got a lot of work to do. And when I say a lot of work to do, they got 4 or 5 seasons worth of work to do unless they get some guys in this 2012 draft, because they had a draft with a lot of players. They drafted 11 players. If they can find a way to get production out of these 11 guys, or at least 7 of them, 6 or 7 of them to be good players for them, then the Browns can turn this thing around a lot quicker than I suspect, but I just don't see it. I need to be shown that on the field. Let's get into the Browns camp battles, and they should have a lot more camp battles than they do, but they don't. So let's just talk about some of the positions that you need to look out for Cleveland in the 2012 season. You start at the wide receiver position. Mohamed Massaquoi is supposed to start across from Greg Little. Mohamed Massaquoi, and you remember him from that vicious hit he took from James Harrison when he was left sitting on his knees, basically out. And he gets concussions too often. They just had their first preseason game, and guess what? Mohamed Massaquoi got a concussion. And so you don't know if he's going to be able to play. You don't know when he's coming back. You don't know how often he's going to play throughout the season, because this isn't something that's brand new for him. This is a occurrence that happens too often to Mohamed Massaquoi. You don't know how much longer he's going to be able to play football at the rate he's getting these concussions. So you got to look and see who's going to be across from Greg Little in the 2012 season and moving forward. You have to like Josh Gordon, the supplemental draft pick that they got this year, and say that he's a guy that can start. He's got the size, he's got the measurables to play in the National Football League. Can he produce? Can he stay out of trouble? Well, you'll see. Travis Benjamin, another receiver that they drafted out of Miami, a smaller guy. I prefer my Travis Benjamin in the slot as a Josh Cribbs. I prefer Josh Cribbs in the slot. These are guys that could also play that second receiver, but I would prefer those guys to be in the slot. I would like to see Josh Gordon get a shot at that second wide receiver position and put these smaller guys with speed to burn in the slot and let them eat up slower corners, let them eat up corners in that space, get on top of safeties and get over them and make plays in the passing game that way. You could sneak Travis Benjamin out wide at that second receiver position. He's so quick. He's so fast. And you might be able to use that running game to suck the defense and go play action fake and go up top to him, because he's got speed to burn. As you saw in that preseason game, he caught a nice pass from Brandon Whedon for about 40 yards in that preseason game, or about 30-something yards in that preseason game. And that was the extent of Brandon Whedon looking good, really, in the preseason game against the Lions. And that was his best play from scrimmage. And so maybe Travis Benjamin can be somebody that you could put out wide. Then you move to defensive tackle. And the Browns have a super talented defensive tackle, Phil Taylor, that they drafted last year out of Baylor. The problem is Phil Taylor tore his muscle in his chest. And so he's out probably for the whole season. So now you're looking to replace what he started to bring to the table at the defensive tackle spot. And with that, the Browns are going to have to do it with a slew of guys. You have Adaba, Rubin, Scott Paxson, who just injured himself in the preseason game, John Hughes, a 2012 draft pick of the Browns this year, and Billy Wynn, another draft pick of the Browns out of Boise State, and he is somebody that has immense talent, but he's another one of these guys. You question the motor. I don't like motor guys when it's being questioned. I can't get with a guy that needs to be motivated, is not self-motivated. Can they get the production out of him? He fell all the way to the 6th or 7th round, and his production and his talent says that he should be a 2nd or 3rd round pick, but he dropped on a lot of people's boards because they couldn't trust him with his motor. They didn't know how much football meant to him. Those guys are scary in my estimation, and so they got a lot of guys trying to fill Phil Taylor's shoes. Good luck. May the force be with you on that one. Moving right along, we get to the rookie watch, and we're going to go over their draft because the Browns had an extensive draft. This is my thing, and I'm going to say it a lot. You're going to hear me say this often. Don't be bad and unproductive. Be bad and be productive at the same time. Don't be bad and continue to compound your team's ineptitude by not picking good players in the draft. And the Browns need to somehow find ways to hit home runs. They can't hit singles. They can't hit doubles. They're not good enough to hit doubles. They need homers. So the problem with trying to hit home runs is that you heighten your ability to strike out. A lot of times when you go for home runs, you go for boom or bust guys. And if you don't hit a home run with them, if they're not a boom guy, guess what? They're a bust guy and you strike out. I don't know. See, you got to find that fine line to which you got to walk. And the Browns haven't been able to do so. They've been taking marginal players and trying to coach them up and hoping that they could prove dividends for them. But at some point, you got to say, all right, look, we got and receiver Josh Gordon that they took in a supplemental draft is a step in the right direction for the Browns because it shows that they're willing to take a risk on a guy that may not have the best past but can play football if given the chance. And they need to start taking chances on guys and hit home runs. You got to find that fine line, but at some point you also have to take chances because you're not a good football team. You don't have enough talented players on your roster, and so you have to take chances on guys that might not have the best past but can play football and try to get them to walk the straight and narrow path. So we go to the rookie watch. Their first round selections, well documented. Trent Richardson, the running back out of Alabama. He's going to come in. They're looking for him to start and prove to be a game-changing running back. 2 years ago, they had Peyton Hillis come in and electrify the NFL. The Browns weren't half bad in that season. Of course, that only amounted to 5 or 6 victories, but the Browns were in game and they walloped some good teams. They beat the brakes off of the Patriots at home. They went to New Orleans and smacked them in the mouth in their own place. When you can run the football, it changes things. Running the football does something to your team, it does something for your team, and to the other team mentally. If the Browns can run the football with Trent Richardson, establish a run game, play off of that run game with Brandon Weeden in the play-action fake game, they've got speed on the outside. They've got guys that can run. If Weeden can get them the football and his arm is strong enough to do so, they might not be as bad as we think they're going to be in 2012. The problem is Trent Richardson has to stay healthy. He just had surgery, so he's going to miss a few weeks. He has to stay healthy. He has to produce. And the line has to block for him. The Browns have a pretty good O-line, okay? So if they can open holes for Trent Richardson, protect Brandon Weeden, give him time to go through his reads, he's going to make mistakes. He's a rookie. That's what happens when you're a rookie quarterback. But he's also going to make his share of plays. If they can find a way to get these guys to produce early on, you never know. Not saying it's going to be a 8-8 season, but you never know. 6-10, 7-9, maybe, probably not. Probably not. Anyway, second round pick. They took the offensive tackle Mitchell Schwartz out of California. Another guy they're looking to plug and play day one. They want him to be their right tackle moving forward. And like I said, they're building something along their offensive line. There are not many positions that the Browns have that you say, hey, that looks like a really stout position for them. But the offensive line is one of them. Alex Mack, the secret world of Alex Mack. Their center, he's a pretty good center. You look out at left tackle Joe Thomas, that's a grade A tackle in this league. So if Mitchell Schwartz can come in, hold down the right tackle position, you got stalwarts, you got linchpins at the major positions, the three key positions on your offensive line. You look at their third round selection, John Hughes out of Cincinnati. He's strictly a depth guy. He's not someone that you really want to start. I was surprised they took him this high. The Boise State tackle that they took later on in the draft was actually a better pick at that pick. But like I said, he fell down people's boards. They knew that he would still be there. He rose up people's boards in what he did in the Senior Bowl. So I don't know. Maybe he's someone that could come in and play. Again, Phil Taylor's out this year. They're going to need guys to step up. Maybe he's one of them. Maybe I'm wrong about him, but I think he's a depth rotational guy at best. You look at their fourth round selections, Travis Benjamin, the wide receiver out of Miami. Again, small speedster that can get it done in the passing game if given the chance. He's somebody that can definitely be a deep threat for the Browns. They have to run the football, don't allow him to get down the field. And also they took James Michael Johnson, the linebacker, the inside linebacker from Nevada. I actually wanted the Redskins to take this guy. We took the Texas linebacker instead. And so James Michael Johnson is an interesting prospect. He's a guy that, if given the chance, and he's going to get plenty of chances on this Browns team because they drafted him as a middle linebacker looking to back up DeQuell Jackson. They have injuries out at linebacker. You have Chris Golcong tore his ACL in camp. He's gone for the year. Scott Fujita is going to miss the first 3 games with that Bounty Gate suspension. So you don't have anybody at outside linebacker. Both of those positions are basically open for business. They have to move Michael Johnson out there. So they have to move James Michael Johnson out to outside linebacker because they don't have any depth at linebacker. They don't have any talent at linebacker. So he's going to have to go out there and play. And I think he might be able to produce for them. Maybe that'll be a blessing in disguise, and they might find out that, hey, he's actually a pretty good outside linebacker. I like James Michael Johnson. Let's see what he can do. Fifth round selection, guard Ryan Miller out of Colorado. Depth, he's going to be a guy that plays multiple positions along that offensive line. And so he's going to provide depth, and I look for him to make the roster. Again, there's not a lot of talent, so I don't see why a lot of these draft picks won't make the roster. You go to the sixth round, their sixth round selections, and they selected outside linebacker Emmanuel Acho out of Texas. He's a raw prospect. He can get after the quarterback, but they're going to need to do some work with him to help him mature at the linebacker position. That's somebody that down the line may be able to give them some quality snaps and quality and be a starter in this league for them. We'll see. You also look at Billy Wynn, which is the defensive tackle out of Boise State that I was referring to earlier when I told you his talent level doesn't match the effort you get from him on the field at all times. He has talent, and he can be a good defensive tackle in the National Football League. He might have been the most talented player on the Boise State roster last year. And that's saying a lot because Boise State usually has good players on their team. But he was among the best on that roster, but you don't know from play to play if you're getting maximum effort from Billy Wynn. And that's a question that the Browns have to ask themselves. But again, I'm all for picks like this because the Browns need to start hitting home runs. They have to stop settling for singles and doubles and hit home runs and be willing to strike out if they don't hit a home run. But they need talent. They're not getting enough talent on the football field, And that's why it's translating to so many losses, because they don't have the talent to compete with good teams in this league. They don't have the talent to compete with adequate teams in this league consistently. And their defense isn't even that bad. Their defense is pretty good, actually. So the fact that they don't have a lot of talent really speaks volumes to how bad that offense really is, because the defense, for the most part, gives the offense a chance, or every chance that it can, to win the ball game, and the offense usually doesn't respond at all. You move on to the 7th round selections, and this is an interesting pick for the Browns. Cornerback Trevin Wade is an interesting pick for the Browns because they really like him, and he had a heck of a sophomore season, but followed it up with a lackluster junior season at Arizona, and so his stock kind of fell. He's not the fastest corner in the world, but he moves well, and he's not a big corner either, but he moves pretty well on his feet. You'd be surprised at his abilities when he's out there on the field. And so if they can get him to return to his sophomore form, they might have a steal here in the 7th round. And they like him a lot. They like what they've seen thus far in camp. He's actually playing the slot. And because Demetri Patterson went down in the preseason game against the Lions, and so instead of the next corner up in line, and his name escapes me right now, instead of him stepping up and being the next corner to play, he leapfrogged him, and now he's in the slot. So they like what Trevin Wade is doing in camp. Let's see what Trevin Wade is about. Maybe he could be a guy that the Browns can look to get some production out of the bottom half of this draft. And they also drafted Brad Smelly, the tight end out of Alabama. They converted him to a fullback. You'll see Brad Smelly. I like them converting him to a fullback. I like him. He's a big guy. He can move a little bit. He's not afraid to get stick his nose in there, block guys. He'll probably be a good fullback for Trent Richardson and his Browns offense. That's your rookie watch. We move on to the experiment. As we get into the experiment, I dubbed this experiment "No More Browns Paper Bag?" ? Do you need to still put a Browns paper bag on your head? I don't know. It remains to be seen. I'll leave it at that. If you're a Browns fan, this is not a fun time for you. It is exciting in the sense that you have hope. And again, being a fan of the Redskins, I can speak to hope. Hope is the one thing that keeps your engine running as a fan. You don't have hope. You don't have anything as a fan of any sport. I don't care what sport it is. If you don't have hope and don't think that your team has a shot or has good players, you don't have anything. You don't have a leg to stand on. And so for the first time in a long time, the Browns have hope. They have something to believe in, or at least something they think they can believe in Trent Richardson and Brandon Weeden. We're going to find out here shortly if they are, in fact, someone that they can believe in, someone that should give them hope. But you have it right now. Treasure it, because it may not last long. Let's hope it does for your sake. Research question. Can the Browns find more talent in Trent Richardson and Brandon Weeden and begin to build respectability and confidence among Browns players, coaches, and fans alike? If you're a fan of the Browns, you need talent. You want to see Brandon Weeden and Trent Richardson come in and do similar things to what the Bengals rookies, A.J. Green and Andy Dalton did for the Bengals last year. Now, you're not looking for it to be on that extreme a level, because a quarterback and a receiver can do a lot more damage than a quarterback and a running back. Quarterback and receivers are in sync together. They're a tandem. They're linked and joined at the hip. If a receiver is good and a quarterback is good, they can be great together, and that's what Andy Dalton and A.J. Green did last year. You have a quarterback and a running back. Running backs can change the game. They can do things for your offense and open up things for other guys. If you're the Browns and these two are as good as you think they can be, what you need then is other guys to step up and produce at the level that Whedon and Richardson are producing at. If you can get that, you should feel great as a Browns fan in 2012. Let's go to the hypothesis. If the Browns can hit a home run with Trent Richardson and Brandon Whedon and at least 4 other draft choices in the 2012 draft class, then the Browns will be looking forward to the future and suddenly wouldn't look as bleak. It would look brighter. The future would look so much brighter if Trent Richardson and Brandon Whedon and let's say Travis Benjamin and let's say Josh Gordon and a few more, Mitchell Schwartz. Let's say you hit home runs on these guys in this draft. You got to feel good as a Cleveland Browns fan. You got to feel like the future is suddenly bright for this franchise. If you can get that to happen as a Cleveland Browns fan, you will feel like the 2012 draft and season was a success. That's what you should be looking for. Keep your goals realistic. You're not going to the playoffs. You're not going to win a lot of games. But you're looking for guys to show you that they are the real deal, that you can build around them. Let's hope that you get that. Materials needed. All right, Whedon and Richardson, show me what you got. Show me what you got. I want to see what you can do. Are you really worth a first-round draft pick? Both of you. I want to see what you got. Trent Richardson, are you a workhorse? Brandon Whedon, are you a good quarterback or are you a 28, 29-year-old prospect that should have just stuck to baseball? Which one are you? Show me what you got. I want to see, fellas, because the Browns fans need to know what they got moving forward. Dog Pound D, proceed. Dog Pound D, proceed. Your defense is pretty good. You don't give up a lot of points. You don't give up a lot of points or yards through the air. You're very stingy. You were second in the league in pass defense last year. That's impressive. Joe Hayden is playing football out there. You have guys playing good ball. Sheldon Brown is playing solid football in that secondary. Your secondary isn't the problem. Your problem is the run defense. That was 28th in the league last year, giving up over 147 yards per game. What you need to do is improve on that rush defense, continue to play good pass defense, get more turnovers, get more sacks, and you'll be fine. That defense is good. You're playing good football on the defensive end. You're stopping teams from scoring touchdowns. You just need to force more turnovers, shorten the field for your offense, and get more sacks. Simple as that. All right, next thing up. Improve that shoddy run defense. And I just spoke to that. 28th in the league last year. Not going to get it done. Giving up over 147 yards. That's terrible. Got to be better. Got to shore that up. More talent, please. I've already spoke to the talent deficiency that the Browns have. They need more talent. Let's hope that this draft for them brings them 6 or 7 guys that can play in the National Football League and play at a high level. If you're a Browns fan, that's what you're looking for. Acquire talent. You can't move forward and think that you're going to get better if you're not acquiring talent. Don't be a bad football team that stays bad and is not productive when being bad. If you're going to stink, be productive while you stink. Use these high draft picks to yield dividends for you. Get guys that can play football and play it well. Stop getting so many concussions. I know you can't control this one. But you guys get more concussions, it seems like, more documented concussions than any other team in the league. You look at Colt McCoy's concussion last year, well documented. You look at Muhammad Massaquoi. He always gets concussions. He's got another one already this year. Don't know when he's going to be back. You look at their tight end, Benjamin Watson, a very talented tight end. When he plays, but you know why he doesn't play often? He had 3 concussions last year. Ouch! You can't keep getting concussions, guys. Stop lowering your heads. Quarterbacks, stop getting your receivers and tight ends lit up. Stop getting concussions, guys. You can't win games if you're not on the field. You can't play football if you're getting concussions. I know it seems a little harsh, and you can't control that. You can't control if you get a concussion, if you duck your head down. You know, it's a reaction. That's a human body reaction. Somebody's coming near you, you're going to curl up. You're going to put your head down, and it's going to force you to put your head down and lead with your head, essentially, and give yourself that much more of an opportunity to get a concussion. But that is football. But the Browns just seem to get so many more concussions than everyone else. Try to limit your concussions, guys. And that's scary. I don't like when guys get concussions because concussions aren't safe. We know that. That goes without saying. But it's scary to watch a guy lay motionless on the field or not know what happened or can't remember the last quarter of the game that he played in. That's scary. Let's see if you can not get as many concussions in 2012, guys. Okay, let's get into the data. And Brandon Weeden needs about 21 to 2,300 passing yards for about 17 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. That would be a great season for him in my estimation. I think that he's not gonna wow you in the stats because that Browns offense isn't an offense that's gonna run up and down the field. If that Browns defense can create turnovers, maybe so. Maybe they can get more opportunities. Maybe he can score more touchdowns. Maybe they can score more points. But going off of what they've done in the past, that's not likely to happen. So when you do get the football, look for them to matriculate the ball down the field using the run game. Have Brandon Weeden play off of that run game with play action fake. Find guys down the middle of the field, the tight ends specifically, and then go out wide to your receivers and make plays that way. Look for about 57.6% completion percentage. Again, rookies normally don't make it to 60. If I'm a rookie, that's my goal, 60% completion percentage, but that's tough to do as a rookie. You move on to Trent Richardson. He needs to be a workhorse for them. If he can stay healthy, I'm looking for 250 to 300 carries. That's a lot of carries. 300 is a lot of carries. I would really like that number to be 250 to 275. But knowing the Browns, because they don't know how to act when they get a good thing, that could be 300 carries. You know, see Jamal Lewis when they got him, how they finished running him into the ground. I could see them giving Trent Richardson 300 carries if he proves to be a workhorse. Let's hope it's 250 to 275 though. For 925 to 1,100 rushing yards. That's a big window that I gave him. If the line is blocking and protecting him, he can get to 1,100 rushing yards. If the line is not blocking and not protecting as well, even if it's just adequate, he should be able to get to 900 rushing yards with the amount of attempts that I think they're going to put on his workload. So let's see what he can do. I'm looking for 7 to 9 touchdowns from Trent Richardson. And again, he's going to get the ball a lot, especially in the red zone. They're going to need him to be that battering ram that he was at Alabama. You go on to Greg Little. I like Greg Little. I like what Greg Little can do once he gets the football in his hands. He's a big guy. He's 6'3". He's got a nice size frame on him. Let's see if Greg Little can take the next step with Brandon Weeden. They need to grow together. They're both young. If Brandon Weeden is going to be a good quarterback, he needs to find a favorite target. Why not have that guy be Greg Little? Greg Little, I'm looking at 55 to 62 catches for 840 to 890 receiving yards and 5 to 7 touchdown receptions. Those are good numbers. And especially if they can find a way to work together and be in sync, I think those are great numbers for Greg Little. We'll see, because, again, everything needs to be within the framework of the Browns' offense. That's a lot of yards for him, especially when I said Whedon was only going to have around 1,700 to 2,100 yards passing. So that's a lot of yards within, Whedon's amount of yards. But if he's going to rely on someone, why not have it be Greg Little? Browns tight ends. And again, I just told you about Benjamin Watson's concussion history. So they've got questions with their tight ends. They have a couple of guys that they like. If they could get this tight end group to work together and produce on the football field, who knows? Sky's the limit, because they have guys that they like. Let's get into how many catches I think they're going to have as a group. And I'm looking, because a rookie quarterback's best friend after the run game is the tight end. So let's think. Let's look and see. 60 to 66 receptions from this tight end group for 660 to 680 receiving yards and 4 to 6 touchdowns. That's what I'm looking for from this Browns tight end group as a whole. Browns D. All right, the Browns defense needs to be better getting sacks, forcing turnovers. Last year, they did not force a lot of turnovers. Only 8 interceptions and only 12 fumbles recovered. So that's a total of 20. They need to be better than that. That is a meager number in the NFL. You're looking for the Browns to come up with 25 to 32 turnovers. You're looking for them to have 37 to 40 sacks. Last year, they had 25 sacks. That's terrible. They have to get more sacks. They have to find ways to generate pressure on the quarterback. They need to find a way to get up there. Matter of fact, that's too high of a number. Let's bring it down. Let's scale that number back, because that's a lot. That's a big jump to ask of them. Let's go 30 to 33 sacks. That's more reasonable from 25. 30 to 33 sacks is what they should have. And you look, they only gave up 20.2 points last year. They were they only gave up 19.6 points last year. They were stingy on defense. That's a good thing. It's great to be stingy. And so I'd look for the Browns to continue to be stingy. That's the one thing they can hang their hat on, is that they don't allow teams to score points on them in bunches. If they can continue to do that, you give yourself a chance to win football games. So I have them down for 19.6 again. Stay right where you are. If you can keep teams under 20, you give your team a chance to win in the fourth quarter. Excuse me. Special teams. I put this category in for the Browns because Joshua Cribbs needs to focus in on special teams and less at receiver. He's a dynamic return man in this league. And the one thing about dynamic return men, when they try to play receiver, is that they focus too much on receiver and less on what got them to be a household name in the league. Joshua Cribbs makes the Pro Bowl because of special teams, not because of being a wide receiver. He needs to focus on that. Let's see Joshua Cribbs get back to being the guy that was dynamic for the Browns in the past. I want one of each. I want a touchdown on punt return and on kickoff returns. I want one of each from Joshua Cribbs this year. He can do it if he focuses, and I think they're going to scale him back on his receiver duties. So he should focus more on special teams, and I agree with that. Independent variable. The Browns have to improve that porous rush defense. We talked about it. It was 28th in the league, giving up 147 yards per game. That's too much. That's egregious. That's atrocious. They have to be better. And if it is, dependent variable, if it is, then they will stop teams force them to punt more often. You have to think about this. Think about this for a second. Being run on consistently is demoralizing for a defense. It does something to you mentally. All right, just picture this. You're at school and a bully comes up to you and tells you, when you come to school tomorrow, I'm going to punch you in your face and take your lunch money. You laugh at him and say, hey man, stop playing. You ain't going to do that. You come to school the next day and the bully punches you in the face and takes your lunch money from you. How demoralizing is that? To know that someone told you, I'm going to do this to you, and you can't do a thing about it. That's what it feels like to get ran on, like the Browns got ran on last year. They have to be better at that. And they have to force more turnovers. They have to get more sacks. If they can do that, they'll get their offense on the field more. They won't allow teams to control the pace of the game by running the football, control time of possession, grind out the clock in a close game because you can't stop them from getting 4 yards on each play. And you'll be able to give your team a chance to score more points because you'll be getting the football back into their hands. More turnovers, shorter fields, more points for your offense. That's what you need because the Browns don't score a lot of points as it is. You go on to the constant. Being bad. The Browns are consistently bad. They're constantly bad. That's all I could come up with. The Browns aren't a good football team year in, year out. They're at the bottom of the AFC North year in, year out. They have to get better. They have to get more talent. Until they do that, they'll continue to be bad. Moving on to the conclusion. The Cleveland Browns are a work in progress. That's an understatement. I'm being generous. They're a work in progress. If they can have guys pan out and quickly, if they have Brandon Weeden and they have Trent Richardson come in, and like I said, 3 or 4 other guys out of this year's draft class, preferably skill position guys, Mitchell Schwartz, the tackle, the right tackle that they're looking to start, Travis Benjamin, wide receiver, Josh Gordon, wide receiver. They can have guys come in and produce in 2012. They can turn this thing around a lot quicker. They can become a formidable team in this league a lot faster. But right now, they're on the track to a 4 or 5 year process of turning this thing around. That's a long time if you're a fan. It's a long time to be hopeless. You have hope right now, but if it's not something that turns out to be what you thought it was, you're right back to square one. You have to hope as a Browns fan that these guys are good and they can play and be upwards of the upper portion of the top half of the NFL. You have to hope that these guys are good. And you will only be able to tell that by watching them this season. Only time will tell. I said all that to say this. I have the Browns going 1-15 this year. And that's an extreme number. All right? That number has them losing every game in the division. They're going to play tough games in the division. Who knows? They might sneak Cincinnati once, maybe twice. You don't know. They may get some of these teams in the NFC East. You don't know. They may win a couple games that I just don't have them winning. So they're probably going to be closer to 3-13, 4-12. Really, they are, because they're probably going to win one because their defense is good enough to win them 2 or 3 games. They're probably going to win 3 or 4 games. But I'm a show me guy. As my dad says often, I'm from Missouri. You have to show me. I don't believe that you're good enough to win 4 games. Show me that you're good enough to win 4 games. Show me that your guys that you drafted are any good. Show me. I need proof. Until then, you're a 1-15 team in my book. And that's going to close the chapter on the lab report for the Cleveland Browns. Extra point. I go back to Hard Knocks. That was one of the best watches of the year. You have to watch Hard Knocks And if you were going to watch any episode of Hard Knocks, that was the one to watch. That last 10 minutes with Chad Johnson, that was some scintillating TV. And I'm going to tell you what, the Hard Knocks producers really hit a home run this year. They picked the right team because that was some good television. Hard Knocks is a great program. I love it. I can't state that enough. You should watch it. I'm watching it, as should you. And that's a touchdown. I just tacked on the extra point. I will see you tomorrow again. Same time, same place. Hit me up, inbox, in the lab room at gmail.com. On Facebook. Like me on Facebook, in the lab room. I'm on Twitter. Twitter handle is in the lab room or at in the lab room. I'm here. I'm going to be here. Let's continue to do this. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.